And we're live. Excellent. Friday afternoon. Time for a beer and a bit of gaming. You may recall from my top 10 that I'm a big fan of the Mark Simonich range of games. I have most of them. One I hadn't played for quite a while was Holland 44. One of the later of the series. It came out in 2017. I pushed it around a little bit when it first came out. The intention was to play it face to face, but I forget the reasons why, but it never happened. So I fancy giving it another go. It's not. I mean, it is a great system. I think it feels different from quite a few of the others that I've played. Certainly different from Ukraine 43 and Stalingrad 42. Just the nature of the terrain. I think the scale's different. So it's quite nice in that respect. You know, you are playing what feels like a very specific operation. You know, the 30-core attempt to drive along a fairly narrow, terrain-restricted route to meet up with the first airborne in Arnhem. Terrain rules are more akin to sort of Ardennes 44. In fact, I'd probably say they're a notch higher in terms of the various sort of permutations of different types of terrain and vehicle access on terrain, and whether or not it affects the armour modifier. Had to read those a few times. So it's probably one of the harder ones to get into. I think it's just with a little bit more. There's a little bit more work which is required. But I think once you've done the homework, I think it does reward that bit of depth of Chrome to give it the right feel for this particular campaign. So I've just done the first two turns. I'm not using any optional rules. Straight out of the box. Allied casualties have been quite light. The first airborne are at the bridge, so Frost troops have made it. I think that's probably a given. I don't think you can stop that as a German. If you go with the historical drop zones, you can't prevent the British from getting to the main bridge at Arnhem, which is it's probably a good thing, because if you didn't get in there in the first turn, you probably never would. So maybe that is hardwired in. But you end up with essentially 4 different battles, at least initially. The 101st going in at Eindhoven, 82nd, Nijmegen, and of course 1st Airborne into Arnhem. It could, I suspect, as it should be, it'll be very weather dependent. I would imagine a series of very poor weather rolls, or conversely very good weather rolls would swing the game one way or the other. That's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? When you play a game with weather where you've got paratroopers and air supply and air support, it's just how it is. There's a number of unknown units that start. I forget the exact number, 18 or 20 or something. So these are inverted. These are sort of question mark counters, which are randomly placed on a set number of hexes. So that will obviously give a lot of variety in the initial turns, because there could be anything from a ghost counter where there's nothing there, or potentially quite a useful defensive unit. It's how much the airborne troops wish to push, because you can attempt to enter those hexes during movement, and you can also attack. in the combat phase, so you know, you could potentially clear them out quite quickly. But there's an element of risk associated with that. So I definitely like it. I think it stacks up well against all the other ones in the series. I would hesitate to try and put them in any order really, because I think it's more of a mood thing. What sort of mood are you in? But I'll show you around the map anyway. You can have a look. 30 Corps has made some progress. They're about halfway to Eindhoven, just going into turn 3. It seems to be quite a long way. Still to go. The bridge blowing is there's a couple of bridges which can't be blown, I guess, because that would just completely lock the game down if the bridge at Nijmegen and the one at Arnhem were blown. I suspect it would be a very early bath if that was the case. So they've built in some fixtures that are there for the duration, which is probably a good thing from a gameplay standpoint. But classic sort of single play aid, double-sided, terrain effects on one side, and combat results table with the for those that know the system, the familiar determined defence table, which is quite a nice facet to the series. Makes the combat a bit more interesting, gives the defender some decisions to make. When does he need to hold at the risk of units or extra steps? If there's a key hex he needs to try and hang on to. Right, let's have a look at the map. Okay, you have to apologise for the glare. If I come from this side, it helps a little bit. So you've got 30 Corps and 8th and 12th Corps coming up from the south. They've driven along as far as this town here. What's it called? Valkenswaard. So they're just on the outskirts of that. There is a unit blocking the road up to Eindhoven, but 101st have taken one of the hexes. So they're looking quite good for the first link up, and they've pushed the other troops away from the canal, as would be expected. The game's all about bridges. There's a bridging unit there which has done the first bridge repair. It's important to get those going early. This one here is the one that starts by these guys here. That one starts the game intact, but the other 4 are all blown along the edge. So there's another, you see the other bridging unit just there, about to start to repair that one, and then they'll have to move on. Plenty more work for them to do. Let's try and get in from this side. So 101st Airborne drop zones, you can see there. They managed to secure that bridge. The bridge at Son went, but these two are okay. So there's quite a few Germans that come in from the side here, so they'll be pushing down, putting some pressure onto the western flank of 101st. Then there's a long way down here, pretty empty road. The bridge at Grave can't be blown on the first turn, that's why it's got the sort of chevrons over the bridge there. So it's important the Americans get that on first turn. And then 82nd landing zone is around here mainly, so they've pushed a bit into Nijmegen, but the 406th Division, which is on the eastern border, they're starting to make a bit of a nuisance of themselves. They're supported by their own artillery, which can fire off map, and they're now starting to press on the landing zones. So they want to get those hexes secured to deny them access for the Americans when their additional troops land. And I think they've got one unit that comes in this turn, but there's a lot more coming on turn, I think it's turn 6 for the 82nd. So Grabner went south rather than north. Was that the right decision? I don't know. I think it's probably important to hang on to Nijmegen for as long as possible. There's enough troops already, I think, pushing on Arnhem, and there's plenty more still to come, if I remember the order of battle. So I thought that these guys would be better off going down to support the defenders in Nijmegen and leave Arnhem to these chaps here. That's the 1st Airborne drop zones. So there is a perimeter established around there. They'll get some more guys on. So I think they're coming in Y. You can see Y there. So again, it's a Zockbonds game. So they've managed to secure drop zone Y with Zockbonds to get some more guys down without any negative DRMs on the drop table. So there you are. It's 2 turns in, still early days, but we'll see what happens, and hopefully I'll do another posting at some point.